What's up, lovies? Thanks for joining the Simply Complex podcast, episode 2, where we talk about the journey to wholeness. We want to thank everybody for tuning in for episode 1. It was a great success. And this time around, we're going to actually go ahead and review another video. But before we do that, we want to introduce Miss Paula.
Hello.
We will be talking about a video that really struck home for me. It really, I'm going too deep into it. We're going to watch it first.
Soul holds all ages, which means that in your soul, you are still 6, 9, 12, 15, 21, 28, 35. You are all of those ages. Based on which buttons a person pushes will depict which age you show up as. You ever see a person who you thought was mature behave very childish? Because you pushed the button that activated a different age. And when they were 15 is when they were talked down to. And so now they're 40, but they're mad the way you're talking because it reminds them of when they were talked down to from their mother. And they respond to in a place of emotion and anger. You're like, why are you responding this way? Because it's not the 40-year-old woman responding. It's the 15-year-old who was bullied in high school who promised herself, I'm never going to let nobody else bully me again. All the while, your spirit is saved. Doesn't have anything to do with your spirit, but your soul still needs help. All right? So your soul is where all of your emotions and your will and your mind is, so you can love God with your spirit, but still have a battle in your mind. Why? Because that is the soul. And because you keep saying you don't need to talk to nobody, you're going to keep struggling with it because your soul needs help.
So do we agree or disagree to the video?
Well, I'll start with the fact that watching or listening to what he said, the first word that comes to my mind is trauma. God is a deliverer. Like the Bible says that where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty, right? There is freedom, right? And what I got from his video, yes, I agree with it, I guess you can say. But what I got from his video is that there are literally people that are stuck in their trauma. So if something happened at 5, they were inappropriately touched. Or at 12, maybe parents, passed away, so they felt abandoned. Maybe at, you know what I'm saying? So at whatever age, at 21, maybe they went through, a hard divorce or whatever the case may be. People are, you're functioning in life, but you're still stuck in your places of trauma. And I think that's the place that he was coming from.
I definitely would agree. I think what stood out to me, particularly that posed the question of do you agree or disagree, is when he said, but you're still saved. As you said before, so many people operate from a place of normancy, like trauma is okay to carry around. And we know, or we've been taught, there are 3 trauma responses, either fight, flight, or freeze. And everyone is different. So how we respond in the physical and by our soul does affect our spiritual walk. Would you say that it at least does that?
I don't know about the physical part, but I just think that sometimes depending on where you are in life or what you have experienced in the past affects your, like, how you see God and how you see yourself as a creation of God or as a son or daughter of God.
I guess my main question is, can you operate with unresolved trauma spiritually in an effective way?
I don't think you'll be effective, no. That's like when I was in a place of just extreme, like, brokenness, depression, thoughts of suicide, didn't love myself, didn't know myself, all the things. And at that time, this was my previous marriage over 10 years ago. And so because I went into that so jacked up, so broken, right? I tried to love from broken pieces. So I can try to walk through it, but more than likely, I'm probably going to get cut by it. And I'm going to move all of the people I love away from it so they don't get cut by it. So it's kind of the same thing to me in terms of the trauma that's just sitting there on the floor. And you're trying to be effective, but you can't really, because you need to get to that place of wholeness. And just one of the things that I say, I don't believe that wholeness is this grand destination. I believe that wholeness is a place that you get to where you see yourself through the eyes of the Lord and you experience the freedom that's found in
There
Him.
you go.
And it is very much a journey. It's very much listen, like I'm walking this out with God, but it's not like some grand destination, because that would imply that you will one day be perfect, and we won't be perfect in this flesh on this earth. I don't think you can be effective in the areas where wholeness and healing is needed. So if I was still in that place of depression and bound by that, how can I help bring somebody else out of that? I need to come out first, and then I can reach back down and pull her up.
Right. I think something that you said was very important, and it made me think of bleeding out on people who didn't cut you.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times that's what inevitably happens. We try to help because that's the godly thing to do, that we are saved, we love people. But then we forget that there are things within us that can still harm people. And
Mm-hmm.
so in our way, when things happen, we're triggered, like he said, by whatever
Right.
gesture it is, and it takes us back to that trauma. Now I see you. I see I don't see you. I see the person who hurt me. I see the
Mm-hmm.
person that caused this trauma. And a lot of times we haven't even dealt with that place. We may not even know that age. But if we dig deep and hear our responses
Mm-hmm.
when we're triggered in this manner, then we'll probably get to the root of what that trauma is. Where were you stuck? A lot of people get stuck with their inner, as they say, their inner child not being healed. Like you said, wholeness is not a place where everything ends and everything is perfect now. Wholeness just says that, Lord, I accept that there is freedom in you. I accept that I don't have to keep replaying this trauma over and over again. I don't have to answer to what that called me out to be. I don't have to be on the defense constantly. I don't have to think negative or worry about, as people say, the next shoe to drop. I'm waiting for the shoe to drop. We live in that type of mentality all the time. We always think of worst case scenario. That's a trauma response,
Mm-hmm.
to automatically always go to the negative so that we can already be in acceptance mode.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
feel like I'm one of those people that it took a while for me to realize how negative my thinking was. It took many people that loved me to say, hey, flip that thing. Like, there's a positive to that. And I'm like, but how? Wait,
Mm-hmm.
what do you mean? And it took people from a healthy place to be able to show me healthy. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, a lot of the trauma isn't dealt with because of the help that wasn't given as a child. Back in the day, it was what happens in this house stays in this house type of mentality. And a lot of the older people, now when you try to tell them, hey, they're still working with trauma, they don't want to accept that. So we're naming the facts. What will we say is necessarily the solution for this?
I think your yes to God is really important.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, I think your yes to God is really important, because here's the thing. As a believer, you are going to go through things like, I think some people may paint this false idea that being a follower of Jesus Christ just means like, oh well, if I come to God and He just loves me, then yeah, like everything's going to be great, like I'm never going to go through anything again. That is a lie. Okay.
Right.
For anybody that believes that or has been told that is not accurate.
Major misconception.
Right. So somebody may ask, okay, so if I'm still going to go through stuff, then why would I even come to God? I can just stay where I'm at and I don't have to give my life. I don't have to give my yes. The difference between going through things in a personal relationship with God, and that I want to put an emphasis on that, because building intimacy with God is very, very important. Building intimacy with God is not the same thing as going to church. Building intimacy with God is not the same thing as reading a devotional. Building intimacy with God is not the same thing as watching a sermon on YouTube. That is not the same thing. Again, that has been portrayed as the same thing, but it is not the same thing. Building intimacy with God is personal, just like a personal friendship, right? Or friendship, excuse me, a friendship where you build on that friendship. A marriage where you build with that person, you get to know that person in different seasons. And so I think it's important to just go back to wrap up my thought is that your yes to God is important. So when you give God your yes, you have to let go of the idea that you're not going to go through anything, but you have to embrace the idea that I'm never walking through this alone, ever. There's never a time I'm walking through it alone. Even when I feel by myself, I'm not alone. And everything that I need is in God. And He knows all of the intricate details of my being because He created me. Even when you want to give up, when you give your yes and you build that intimacy, your spirit says, I'm not giving up, God. Okay. Like, I know what I said. I know I said I don't want to do this no more. I know I said I just want to go back to the way I used to do things, but all right, Lord, let me go to bed and I'll wake up and help me. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I know I said a lot, but your yes is important. And with that, building intimacy with God is very important. And you'll be surprised at how trials and testing build your intimacy, because in that you have to make a choice. Either you're going to rely on you or you're going to rely on God. And the difference between, one of the many differences is that He knows everything and we know this much.
But it's definitely true, and we don't know a lot.
Right.
I definitely would think that this would be great advice for all that are listening, but especially those that understand the importance of a yes. But I would like to take it back just a little bit for those that may not have given God their yes yet, or have given God their yes and they're like, hey, I'm giving God my yes. I'm doing what I think I need to do. How do I deal with the trauma? You have to first identify that there is something that needs to be changed.
Yeah.
Acceptance is a big part of your healing journey. It's a big part of becoming whole, being able to identify and be okay with accepting the broken pieces of us. We can't accept that we are broken. We won't feel the necessity of getting fixed. A lot of us want to operate and say it happened, it's old, let the past be the past. I hear that very often. Let the past be the past. But the past has a bearing on who you are, what is shaping you into who you are. And so those things that are not necessarily godly have to be shed off. And in order for them to be shed off, yes, giving God His yes, I want you to come into my heart. I want you to come fix and mold me. But that also gives Him permission to go to those places that we don't want to talk about and regurgitate it back in us. And sometimes when that happens, we find ourselves sitting in denial rather than acceptance of it. And we say, oh, well, it wasn't that bad. Or I just don't want to live there anymore. You don't have to live there, but sometimes we have to visit. We have to visit and allow God to visit with us and hold us through the process of being healed. Because that did happen. That did happen. But it does not identify who you are. It does not dictate who you are unless you let it. There's diseases that people have, and they always say, if you had got in here sooner, this could have been a different outcome. If you got in here sooner, that person could have lived. If you had gotten here sooner, if we had got the deliverance and the wholeness that we need sooner, we can touch more souls. We can do more of what God has called us to do. We can walk out whatever that is. Everyone's purpose is different. You may never get a mic. You may never be on someone's pulpit. That may not be your ministry. God calls for different type of ministries. You might have an outside ministry. You may have a children's ministry. You may have a community ministry. Whatever it is that God has called you to do, the purpose that lives within you cannot be handled and done correctly without us dealing with the intricate parts of us that God wants us to be healed from. And also, therapy is important. God and therapy can exist. I know that's not what we were taught. I know that, at least for me, I can say that pretty much it's something to pray it away. I'm going to pray everything away. God has the power to do all things. And so can He miraculously heal me with no need for therapy? Absolutely. But did He also create a place for me to be able to get this out and get the tools that I need? See, sometimes I think we forget that there are things that are needed to complete each task. And we try to take shortcuts or rig it a certain type of way so that we can skip steps. But it's
Mhm.
important that we realize that education is needed in all things. And so, especially when we have responsibility over people, or, it can just be our kids. It doesn't have to be, again, that's a ministry. We have to be honest and accountable in order for us to heal. I
Yeah, no,
think,
absolutely. I think self-assessments are important
yeah,
along your journey of life. Don't be like me in the sense that I can be over analytical. Don't be like me. But what I'm saying
not
is
just
that
you.
yeah, a lot of people. I think women, this anyway. Um, Self-assessments are important. I remember a birthday a few years back that I had, and I had decided that I was going to spend this birthday by myself. So, like, I had planned the day to get something to eat. I went to the aquarium, but I intentionally did it by myself. And I remember the next day, or a couple of days later, I was at church, and one of my friends asked what I did for my birthday, and I told her, and she said, "Who did you go with?" And I said, "I went by myself." And she said, "Oh my gosh, why would you do that? Like, I could have went with you, or like, why would you?" And for me, because this was post getting a divorce, I'm happily married now, thank you, Jesus.
Yay.
But this was
With
like
a baby.
post, right, with a little baby. I needed to I needed to self-assess. I needed to see where I was. I needed to see, can I literally go somewhere by myself and be okay? That was me. I'm not saying that everybody has to do this.
We can take a pause on that because I feel like a lot of people can't. Can you sit by yourself?
Can you really be okay? Right? Um, what are the thoughts that go on in your mind when you're by yourself? What are the things that you're thinking about? What is your focus? So again, I think self-assessment is important. Doesn't mean that you have to plan a day, but I'm saying, like, even just sitting in your house, right? Just sitting there, no TV on, your phone's on silent, and just sitting. What are the thoughts? What are the things that come to your mind? Just talk to God. See, I think sometimes we can make our relationship with God and who He is more complex than what is actually
Sure.
true.
For sure.
Um, and so we feel like prayer and which is just communicating with God, right? That's all that is. That there's some secret formula, and that pastors have an inside, VIP exclusive to God, or leaders, or somebody with a mic. And that's not the case, y'all. Like, that's not the case. Jesus said, "Come to me, all who are weary," right? There's more to that, but that's just like that first part. Come to me, right? It doesn't mean come to me like this, or else I won't receive you.
Right.
People may operate like that.
Right. Come on.
People may be that way,
Yeah.
but that's not our God, right? And so I just want to reassure someone who may be listening to this and feel like, well, I've just been through too much, or I've just done too much. See, guilt and shame are holding a lot of people in bondage as well.
Yes.
Not just what has been done to you, but the things that you have done.
Yeah.
You've been holding on to that. And God wants you to be free from that, because there is no condemnation to those that are in Christ Jesus. But you have to believe that for yourself, right? Yes, you have to deal with the guilt and shame and learn the lessons, right? Like, learn from your mistakes. But God doesn't want you to be bound to guilt and shame, just like God doesn't want you to be bound by the things that have happened to you. And the people that have hurt you and disappointed you and all of those things. So, my message today simply is, I keep going back to it, but to give it a word is just freedom. Really, it's just freedom. And knowing that it is possible for you. You have to believe that. And I think that one of the foundational pieces to being able to heal from trauma is to believe that you can actually be free and you don't have to live in bondage. Doesn't mean that doesn't mean that you're no longer going to be working through things. No, that's a part of your wholeness journey, right? Like I'm working through things now as a mom of an almost 1 year old that I didn't even know was in there. I didn't even know was in there. But it came out becoming a mom. And
Right.
so I'm still saved. I'm still saved. But God is working through some things. And now, as my son is turning 1, compared to when he was first born, things are a lot better. But I'm still working through it, and that's okay. It's okay to be working through things, but your yes and your willingness, and I'll end my thought with this: God is not looking for perfection, God is looking for a willing heart. He's never looking for perfection. He's looking for a willing heart. And that willing heart is displayed, of course, in your belief and confession in who He is, and you walking that out with intentionality from day to day. But your willing heart is also about you saying, "Here I am, God, I'm dealing with this." And that intimacy and that vulnerability that is built with Him.
Amen. Well, I definitely agree. I think that this is a very, very in-depth topic that we can always
Mhm.
dig and pull and pull and pull more out of.
Yeah.
But with that, we're going to leave you guys with these thoughts that it's
Mhm.
necessary to just evaluate. Just
Mhm.
take a minute and ask yourself, do I respond from an age that something happened that I may not even be aware of? Do I respond more childlike than
Mhm.
maturely? Do I find myself defending myself? Do I feel myself easily agitated, easily defensive? It's time for us to grow as people. Yes,
Mhm.
spiritually is very important as all of us have a ministry of our own, but also in the physical, we have to treat people with integrity, morals, and values. And the only way we can see those things that they exist is when we're not blinded by other things such as trauma. So we want to thank you guys for tuning in for episode 2, and we'll see you soon. We love you.
Bye.